I stood in the supermarket parking lot with a grocery list in hand when my phone buzzed. My brother's text was blunt. He told me not to get mad, but that my husband had just offered him money to keep quiet about something. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt absolute relief. Then my brother sent a second message that changed everything. He told me it was not just an affair. My name is Lila Charles. I am 36 years old, and I live in a craftsman bungalow in Madison, Wisconsin. That has been renovated to within an inch of its life. I work as an operations manager for Northbridge Freight Solutions. My job is entirely about logistics. I move things from point A to point B. I anticipate delays. I calculate risks. I ensure that when a blizzard hits the Midwest, the supply chain bends but never breaks. I am good at my job because I do not panic. I assess variables, and I execute solutions. Until 10 minutes ago, I thought my marriage was another well-oiled machine in my life. Gavin Charles, my husband of 9 years, is the regional manager for a major medical device conglomerate. He is handsome in a way that ages well, with the kind of jawline that suggests reliability and a smile that closes deals. We have a 7-year-old son named Leo, who thinks his father is a superhero because he brings home Toblerones from the airport duty-free shops. We are the picture of upper-middle-class stability. We pay our taxes on time. We separate our recyclables. We do not have screaming matches in the driveway. But standing in the parking lot of the Woodman's Market, staring at the screen of my phone, the logistics of my life had just suffered a catastrophic failure. I put the grocery bags in the trunk of my Subaru. I did not slam the trunk. I closed it with a firm, deliberate thud. I got into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and dialed my brother. Miles picked up on the first ring. The background noise was hushed. The sound of thick carpet and expensive lobby acoustics. Miles manages the Iron Horse, a boutique hotel in Milwaukee, about 80 miles east of where I sat. "Lila," Miles said. His voice was tight. It sounded like he was trying to strangle the receiver. "I told you not to call me back until you were alone. Are you alone?" "I am in the car," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was too steady. It was the voice I used when a shipment of semiconductors was stuck in customs in Shanghai. "Tell me exactly what happened. Miles, do not leave anything out." I could hear him inhaling sharply. "He checked in an hour ago." Miles said, "He did not see me at first. I was behind the concierge desk dealing with a VIP booking issue. He walked in with a woman. Lila? She is young, maybe 24 or 25. She did not look like a client. She had her hand in the back pocket of his jeans." I stared at the steering wheel. I knew those jeans. I had folded them yesterday morning before he packed his bag. He told me he was going to Minneapolis for a conference on surgical robotics. Milwaukee was in the opposite direction. "Go on," I said. "He booked the suite." Miles continued. "The one with the loft. I waited until they went up to the room. I was going to storm up there and punch him in the teeth. You know I would have done it. But then he came back down alone about 15 minutes later. He looked frantic. He was sweating. Lila. He looked like he had just run a marathon in a suit." "He saw you?" I asked. "He saw me," Miles said. "He turned white, ghost white. He walked right up to me and he was shaking. He did not even say hello. He did not ask how I was. He just pulled an envelope out of his laptop bag and jammed it onto the counter between us." I closed my eyes for a second, visualizing Gavin, who ironed his boxers, Gavin, who never tipped less than 20%, Gavin, who prided himself on control. "What was in the envelope?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the text. "Cash," Miles said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Stacks of it. I counted it after he ran out. It is $7,500. Lila." He looked me in the eye and said, "Do me a favor. Miles, just keep this quiet. I need you to bury this check in, please. $7,500. The number hung in the cold air of my car. It was a specific number. It was not around $5,000. It was not $10,000. It was $7,500 exactly. That specificity bothered me more than the infidelity itself. It suggested a transaction. It suggested he had that specific amount ready for an emergency. "Did he say anything else?" I asked. He said, "This is not what it looks like," Miles said. But he did not say it like a man caught cheating. He said it like a man caught holding a murder weapon. He was terrified. I have never seen him like that. He said, "I cannot have this get out. It will ruin everything." And then he left. He got in his car and drove off. The girl is still upstairs in the room. My mind began to race, not with sorrow, but with cold. Hard data points. Gavin made good money, but $7,500 in cash was not walking around money. We shared finances. We had a joint checking account, a joint savings account, and linked investment portfolios. I managed the household budget. If he had withdrawn $7,500, I would have seen the notification on my phone instantly. "Where did the money come from, Miles?" I asked. "I do not know," he said. "It is all in $100 bills, old ones." "Lila, are you okay? You sound like a robot. You should be screaming. You should be driving over here to slash his tires." "I am not going to slash his tires," I said. "That is amateur hour." I looked out the window. A woman was pushing a cart full of diapers and soda past my car. Life was going on. My life, however, had just pivoted. "Miles," I said, "listen to me very carefully. I need you to do exactly what I say." "Tell me," he said. "First, do not check the girl out of the system. Keep the record. If he paid cash for the room, I need a copy of the receipt. If he used a card, I need to know which one." "He paid cash for the room, too," Miles said. "A deposit of $500. "Okay," I said. "Second, that envelope, do not spend it. Do not deposit it. Put it in your hotel safe. That is evidence." "Evidence for what?" "Divorce court?" Miles asked. "Wisconsin is a no-fault state. Lila, adultery does not matter as much as you think when it comes to the money." "I am not thinking about divorce court yet." I said, "I am thinking about leverage." There was a silence on the line. I could hear the hum of the hotel lobby in the background. Miles was my big brother. But in this moment, I felt like the elder. He was emotional. He was reactive. I was the operations manager. I was assessing the damage to the infrastructure. "Lila," Miles said, his voice trembling slightly. He looked scared, really scared. I have seen guys cheat on their wives at this hotel 1,000 times. I know the look. It is usually guilt, or arrogance, or embarrassment. Gavin looked like he was being hunted. When he gave me the money, his hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped the envelope. He said, "This is life or death, Miles." "Life or death," I repeated. That is what he said. I tapped my fingernails against the steering wheel. Gavin was a man who sold MRI machines and pacemakers. He played golf on Saturdays. He watched documentaries about World War II. He was not a man who lived in a world of life or death consequences. He was a man of comfort. If he was panicked, it meant the stakes were higher than a marriage. It meant the girl upstairs was not just a mistress. She was a liability. "Miles," I said, "is the girl still in the room?" "Yes," he said. "She ordered room service 10 minutes ago. A club sandwich and a bottle of sparkling water." "Good," I said. "Let her eat. Do not disturb her. Do not let her know you are my brother. Just be the manager." "What are you going to do?" Miles asked. "Are you coming here?" "No," I said. "If I come there, I blow the element of surprise. Gavin thinks he bought your silence. Let him think that for now. If he calls you, you do not answer. If he texts you, you wait 2 hours before replying with one word." "What word?" "Done," I said. "You want me to take the bribe?" Miles sounded horrified. "I am not asking you to take the bribe." "Miles," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming hard as granite, "I am asking you to secure the asset. That money is not a payoff anymore. It is a paper trail." I paused, taking a breath. The heater in the car was blasting, but I felt cold down to my bones. I thought about the $7,500 again. That was 3 mortgage payments. That was a year of college savings for Leo. Gavin had handed it over like it was nothing, just to stop a conversation. "Miles," I said, "I have one question for you, and I need you to answer me honestly." "Anything." "Lila, you are holding $7,500 of my husband's money. He offered it to you to betray me, to keep me in the dark while he plays house with a 20-year-old in your hotel suite." I waited a beat. "Are you really going to stay silent for the money?" It was a test. I needed to know who was on my team. In a war, you need to know who is holding the flank. "Hell no," Miles said immediately. The anger in his voice was genuine. "I would have told you for free. Lila, I only took the envelope because I was in shock. I wanted to throw it back in his face, but he ran out too fast. I am recording the serial numbers right now. I am putting this in the master safe." "Good," I said. "Keep it there. And Miles?" "Yeah?" "Get me the security footage. From the lobby. From the hallway. I want to see his face. I want to see exactly how scared he looked." "I can do that," Miles said. I hung up the phone. I sat there for another minute, watching the shoppers come and go. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 4:45 in the afternoon. Gavin would call me around 6 o'clock. He always called at 6 o'clock when he was on the road, right before he supposedly went to a client dinner. He would ask about Leo's soccer practice. He would ask if the furnace was making that noise again. He would tell me he missed me. For 9 years, I had believed him. I had built a life on the foundation of his word. Now, that foundation had cracked, revealing a rot I had not known existed. But I did not cry. Crying was a waste of hydration. Crying gave him power. I started the car and backed out of the parking space. I had a schedule to keep. I had to pick up Leo from daycare. I had to make dinner. I had to be the wife he expected to find at home, oblivious and safe. As I drove through the gray slush of the Madison streets, my mind went back to the bank accounts. If Gavin had $7,500 in cash, he did not get it from our main accounts. That meant there was another account. And if there was another account, there was another life. You do not hide $7,500 unless you are hiding $100,000. I merged onto the highway, my grip on the steering wheel tightening until my knuckles were white. He thought he could buy my brother. He thought he could buy silence. He thought he was the one in control because he was the one with the secrets. He was wrong. He had just handed me the first weapon in a war he did not even know had started. I was going to find every dollar. I was going to find every lie. And I was going to dismantle him, piece by piece, with the same efficiency I used to manage freight lines across the country. The light ahead turned red. I stopped the car. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked the same as I had 20 minutes ago. Same brown eyes, same messy bun. But the woman in the mirror was different. She was no longer a wife. She was an auditor, and the audit was about to begin. The house was quiet in a way that felt heavy, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. Leo was asleep upstairs, exhausted from a day of second-grade chaos, oblivious to the fact that the roof over his head was being held up by pillars that were rapidly crumbling. I sat at the kitchen island, the granite cold under my forearms. The only light came from the screen of my laptop and the blue digital clock on the microwave, which read 11:14 at night. I had a glass of water next to me. Alcohol would have been the easy choice. A glass of Pinot Noir to dull the sharp edges of the panic rising in my chest. But I needed those edges. I needed them sharp enough to cut through 9 years of trust. I logged into our primary joint account at First Wisconsin Bank. For years, I had been the passive half of our financial partnership. I managed the day-to-day household budget, groceries, utilities, Leo's tuition, while Gavin handled the larger portfolio, the investments, and the savings. It was a division of labor that I had never questioned because I believed we were working toward the same goal: retirement in Florida, a college fund for Leo, a cabin up north. I was wrong. I started with the checking account. At first glance, it looked normal. Mortgage payments, car insurance, the quarterly life insurance premium. But I was not looking for normal. I was looking for the bleed. I filtered the search results. I set the parameters for the last 24 months. The first anomaly appeared on the third page of the statement history. It was dated 18 months ago. A charge for $412 at a restaurant called the Crimson Room in downtown Chicago. I froze. I remembered that weekend. Gavin had told me he was at a regional sales training in Schaumburg, a suburb 40 minutes away from the city center. He had complained about the terrible catering, about the cold sandwiches and the lukewarm coffee. Yet here was a charge for a dinner that cost more than our monthly grocery budget, stamped with a timestamp of 8:45 in the evening on a Friday. I opened a new spreadsheet on my second monitor. I did not title it Divorce. I titled it Audit. I entered the date. I entered the location. I entered the amount. I kept scrolling. 2 months later, there was a charge for the Ritz-Carlton in St. Louis, $650 for one night. He was supposed to be in Des Moines that week. I remembered him calling me that night, whispering because he said his roommate in the twin-share hotel room was asleep. He had lied about the roommate. He had lied about the city. He had likely lied about who was in the bed next to him. I entered the data into the spreadsheet. As I dug deeper, the pattern became a narrative. It was not sporadic. It was systematic. Every 6 weeks, like clockwork, there was a trip. The locations varied: Indianapolis, Minneapolis, Chicago. But the spending habits were identical. High-end steakhouses, luxury hotels, boutiques that sold jewelry and lingerie, not medical devices. Then I found the transfers. They were easy to miss if you were just skimming for the total balance, which I had done for years. They were not huge. Red flag amounts like the $7,500 he had handed my brother. They were smaller, quieter, designed to blend in with the noise of modern life. $2,000. The first one was dated 2 years ago. It was a direct transfer to an external account I did not recognize. The recipient field was blank, but the memo line contained a single word: consulting. I frowned. Gavin was a regional manager. He did not hire consultants. His company had an entire legal and HR department for that. If he needed a consultant, the company paid for it, not him, and certainly not out of our personal checking account. I searched for the term consulting in the transaction history. The screen refreshed, populating a list that made my stomach drop. Every single month, on the 15th, a transfer of $2,000 was made. Sometimes it was $2,200. Once, last December, it was $3,000. I pulled up the calculator app. I did the math. My fingers flying over the keypad with the muscle memory of a woman who spent her life optimizing supply chains. 24 months, varying amounts. The total came to $52,400. I stared at the number. $52,000. That was not a mistress. That was a salary. You do not pay a mistress a monthly retainer unless she is providing a service that goes beyond sex, or unless she is holding something over your head. I looked at the dates again. The transfers started 2 months before the first suspicious hotel charge. That meant the money started flowing before the physical affair began, or at least before he started getting careless with the debit card. Who was receiving this money? I clicked on the transaction details for the most recent transfer, dated 4 days ago. The bank masked the full account number of the recipient, showing only the last 4 digits, 8892. But in the expanded description field, which usually contained bank routing gibberish, there was a name attached to the ACH transfer code, LVE Holdings. It sounded corporate. It sounded legitimate. But when I cross-referenced the dates of the transfers with Gavin's calendar, which I had synced to my phone, a chilling realization took hold. On the days the money was transferred, Gavin was never traveling. He was usually at home or at the local office. These were not impulse payments made in the heat of passion. These were scheduled. These were obligations. I went back to the hotel charges. I compared the timeline. The affair, the dinners, the hotels, had cost us roughly $18,000 over 2 years. The consulting fees had cost us over $52,000. Total misappropriation of marital assets, over $70,000. I sat back in my chair, the light from the screen stinging my tired eyes. My husband had drained $70,000 from our future. That was the kitchen renovation we had put off. That was the trip to Europe we said we could not afford yet. That was the cushion for an emergency that was now staring me in the face. But the money told me something else. It told me a story about fear. A man having a good time spends money on wine and gifts. He does not set up a recurring monthly payment labeled consulting unless he is trying to legitimize the expense, trying to make it look like work if anyone ever looked too closely. He was washing the money. He was trying to make infidelity look like a business expense. Or maybe it was business. I remembered what Miles had said. He looked like he was being hunted. I looked at the spreadsheet again. The numbers were cold. Hard facts. They did not lie. They did not gaslight me. They told me that Gavin was not just cheating on me with a woman named Briar Lane. He was entangled in something that required significant capital to maintain. Was Briar Lane the recipient of the consulting fees? It seemed unlikely. A 24-year-old girl in a hotel room usually wanted cash or gifts, not a structured monthly wire transfer to a holding company, unless she was smarter than she looked, unless she was not just a girlfriend, but a partner in something else. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was a puzzle, and I was excellent at puzzles. I highlighted the column with the consulting fees and colored it red. I highlighted the hotel charges and colored them yellow. The visual representation of his betrayal looked like a heat map of a disease spreading through our finances. I saved the spreadsheet. I saved a backup copy to a thumb drive. I saved another copy to a cloud account that Gavin did not know existed. Then I picked up my phone. It was almost midnight. Miles would still be at the hotel, closing out the late shift or dealing with the aftermath of the day. I typed a message to him. I did not want to wake him if he was sleeping, but I needed to plant the flag. I needed him to know that we had crossed a line from suspicion to confirmation. Keep the evidence. I wrote all of it. The video, the envelope, the guest log. I just finished the audit. He has moved over $70,000 in 2 years. This is not just sex. Miles, he is paying for something else. I hesitated before hitting send. I looked at the dark hallway leading to the bedroom where Gavin would usually be sleeping if he were home. He was in Milwaukee right now, likely in that hotel room, thinking he had solved his problem with a bribe. He probably thought he was safe. He probably thought I was at home, sleeping, dreaming of our life together. He had no idea that I was wide awake and that I had just itemized every single one of his sins. I sent the text. I watched the little delivered notification appear. I closed the laptop. The kitchen went dark again, but the darkness felt different now. It was no longer a void, it was cover. I sat there for a moment longer, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. $70,000. I would get every penny back, and I would find out exactly what LVE Holdings was, even if I had to tear Gavin's life apart to find the paperwork. I stood up and walked to the sink. I washed the glass I'd been drinking from. I dried it and put it away. I checked the lock on the back door. I was calm. The shock had burned off, leaving behind a cold, mechanical determination. Tomorrow, I would hire a professional. I needed eyes on the ground. I needed someone who could follow the money when it left the digital banking portal and entered the real world. I needed to know who was on the other end of those transfers. But for tonight, I had the numbers, and numbers were the only truth that mattered. The coffee in the diner on the outskirts of Madison tasted like burnt hazelnuts and regret. It was raining, a relentless gray drizzle that smeared the windows and turned the world outside into a blur of wet asphalt and brake lights. I sat in a corner booth with my back to the wall. I liked having a view of the door. That was a new habit, developed over the last 48 hours. Across from me sat Cal Donovan. He was a man made of hard angles and silence. He was an ex-cop who had left the force 5 years ago for reasons he did not discuss, and I did not ask about. He wore a canvas jacket that smelled faintly of tobacco and rain. He did not touch his coffee. He was too busy reading the file I had slid across the Formica table. I watched his eyes scan the spreadsheet I had created. He moved down the columns of dates, locations, and the amounts that I had highlighted in red. He did not blink. He did not look surprised. In his line of work, Surprise was probably a luxury he could not afford. "This is thorough," Cal said. His voice was gravel, low and rough. "Most spouses bring me a screenshot of a text message and a hunch. You brought me a forensic audit." "I do not work on hunches." I said, "I work on data." Cal nodded, turning the page to the photograph I had printed out. It was a grainy image from social media, a picture of the girl, Briar Lane, standing in front of a mirror in a dress that cost more than my first car. I pointed to the bottom of the stack. "There is one more thing," I said. "I found a scrap of paper in the pocket of his suit jacket last week. He had sent the suit to the dry cleaners, but they missed it. I almost threw it away." Cal picked up the small, wrinkled piece of paper inside the plastic evidence bag I had improvised from a sandwich bag. On it, in Gavin's rushed, jagged handwriting, were 3 words and a series of numbers. "Project V, 10%. "I do not know what Project 5 is," I said, "but 10% of a project in his industry is not pocket change." Cal looked at the paper, then back at me. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. "I ran the girl," he said, "Briar Lane, 24 years old, no criminal record, a degree in communications from the State University. But here's the part that matters. Lila. She is not just some girl he met at a hotel bar in Milwaukee." I waited. My heart rate remained steady. I was bracing for impact. "She worked for Northbridge Medical," Cal said, "Gavin's company. She was an intern in the compliance department 2 years ago. Then she was hired as a junior coordinator. She quit abruptly 6 months ago." I felt a cold chill slide down my spine. The timeline matched the escalation in the spending. "Compliance," I repeated. "She worked in compliance." Cal nodded. "That is the department that handles ethics violations, kickbacks, bribery, regulatory adherence. If she was sleeping with the regional manager while working in compliance, that is a lawsuit waiting to happen. But if she quit, and the money started flowing heavily after that, it looks less like a severance package and more like blackmail." He tapped the spreadsheet where I had circled the transfers to LVE Holdings. "I looked into this holding company," Cal continued. "It was incorporated in Delaware 18 months ago. The registered agent is a lawyer in Chicago who specializes in quiet settlements. But the beneficiary? I cannot prove it on paper yet without a subpoena, but I guarantee you it is either Briar Lane or someone holding the money for her." I looked out the window. A semi-truck rumbled past, shaking the window pane. "So he is paying her to keep quiet about the affair," I said, "because if the company finds out he slept with a subordinate in the compliance department, he is fired. No severance, no pension, just gone." Cal shook his head slowly. "It is worse than that. Lila." He pulled a folder from his own bag. He opened it and slid a single sheet of paper toward me. It was a photocopy of a document with the Northbridge Medical letterhead. "I have a contact in the district clerk's office," Cal said. "I had him run Gavin's name against sealed records. Nothing came up directly. But when we ran the company name and cross-referenced it with the dates from your spreadsheet, we found a pattern. Gavin was the lead on 3 major hospital contracts in the Midwest during the last 2 years. All 3 contracts were won by his firm despite higher bids than the competition." I looked at the document. It was a purchase order for MRI machines. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars. Briar Lane was the compliance officer signing off on the due diligence for these contracts, Cal said. The pieces clicked together in my mind with the deafening sound of a steel trap snapping shut. "He is not paying her to be quiet about the sex," I whispered. "The sex is just the collateral damage. He is paying her because she knows he rigged the bids." "Or she helped him rig them," Cal said, "and now she wants her cut. That note you found? Project V? 10%. That sounds like a commission on a dirty deal." I sat back, the breath leaving my lungs. I had come here thinking my husband was a cheater. I was leaving with the realization that he was a criminal. The $7,500 he handed my brother was panic money. It was the desperate act of a man trying to plug a leak in a dam that was holding back a flood of federal indictments. "This changes the strategy," I said. My voice was calm, but my hands were cold. Cal nodded. "If you divorce him for adultery, You get half the assets and child support. But if the government comes for him for corporate fraud and bribery, they freeze everything: the house, the accounts, the college fund. You could lose it all. Lila, RICO statutes do not care if you were the innocent wife. If the money in your joint account came from illegal activities, they will take it. I stared at the coffee cup. I thought about Leo. I thought about his school tuition. I thought about the life I had built, brick by brick, using what I thought was clean money. "What do I do?" I asked. "You have two problems," Cal said. "The first is the husband. The second is the money. You need to separate yourself from him legally before the hammer drops. You need to prove you knew nothing about the fraud. And you need to secure your share of the legitimate assets before the feds or the company lawyers start seizing accounts." He paused, looking me dead in the eye. "But you cannot just file for divorce tomorrow," he warned. "If you file now, he will know you are on to him. He might panic. Men like this, when they are cornered, they do stupid things. They empty accounts. They run. Or they try to silence the people who know." He did not have to say the last part explicitly. We both knew what silence meant in this context. "You have to play the role," Cal said. "You have to go home and be the wife. You have to cook dinner. You have to ask him how his day was. You have to let him believe he is safe. Meanwhile, we build the case. We trace the consulting fees to a definitive source. We get hard proof of the bid rigging. Once we have that package, you hand it to your lawyer, and she uses it to force a settlement so fast his head will spin. You get out with the clean money, and you leave him with the mess." I nodded slowly. It was a logistics problem. It was a high-risk extraction. "I can do that," I said. Cal leaned back. "It is going to be the hardest acting job of your life. Lila. He is going to lie to your face every single day. He is going to kiss you goodbye in the morning with the same mouth he uses to order illegal wire transfers. You cannot flinch. If he senses even 1% of hesitation, he will go to ground." I stood up. I buttoned my coat. "I deal with supply chain disruptions for a living. Cal," I said, "I know how to manage a crisis." Cal stood up too. He handed me the folder. "Keep this hidden," he said. "Not in the house." "I will keep it in my office safe," I said. "Only I have the code." I walked to the door, but Cal's voice stopped me. "Lila." I turned back. The neon sign of the diner buzzed above his head. "Be careful," he said. "The guy I see in these papers? He is desperate. He has crossed lines most men only think about. If he thinks you are a threat to his freedom, the dynamic changes. He is not just a cheating husband anymore. He is a man fighting for his life. What he is hiding could destroy his entire career, and he knows it. Do not underestimate how hard he will fight to keep the lid on." "I know," I said. I walked out into the rain. The cold water hit my face, but I barely felt it. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I had to go home. I had to walk into my house, kiss my husband, and ask him about his trip to Milwaukee. I had to look into the eyes of a man who was bribing his former intern to cover up corporate fraud and pretend I saw nothing but love. It was a dangerous game, but for the first time in days, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a hunter. Gavin was the one walking into a trap. He just did not know it yet. I started the engine. The windshield wipers swept back and forth, clearing the view, then letting the rain obscure it again. Clear, obscure, clear, obscure. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the highway. I had a performance to give, and I was going to be brilliant. The office of Marianne Klein was located on the top floor of a glass tower overlooking the Capitol Square in Madison. It was a space designed to intimidate. The carpet was a shade of gray so pale it looked like ice, and the conference table was a slab of polished black walnut that could have seated a jury. There were no pictures of children or dogs on the walls. There were only framed degrees and abstract art that looked like violent slashes of paint on canvas. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first apartment, my hands folded in my lap. I had not come here to cry. I had not come here to ask how to save my marriage. I had come to execute a business transaction. Marianne Klein walked in 3 minutes past our appointment time. She was a woman in her 50s with hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that framed eyes which had seen every variety of marital disaster imaginable. She did not apologize for being late. She sat down, opened a fresh legal pad, and looked at me. "State your objective." "Lila," she said. Her voice was dry, like paper rustling. I slid the binder across the table. It contained the spreadsheet I had built, the report from Cal Donovan, the photographs of Briar Lane, and the printouts of the bank transfers to LVE Holdings. "I want out," I said, "and I want to keep what is mine." Marianne opened the binder. The room was silent for a long time, save for the rhythmic sound of her pen tapping against the table as she read. She scanned the columns of numbers. She lingered on the summary page where I had totaled the unauthorized expenditures. She looked at the corporate registration documents Cal had pulled for the shell company. After 10 minutes, she closed the binder and looked up. Her expression had shifted from professional indifference to clinical interest. "This is not a standard divorce petition," she said. "I know," I replied. Marianne tapped a manicured fingernail on the binder cover. "In the state of Wisconsin, we operate under community property laws. Generally, everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. However, there is a legal concept called the dissipation of marital assets." She leaned forward. "Dissipation is when one spouse uses marital funds for a purpose unrelated to the marriage, usually at a time when the marriage is undergoing an irretrievable breakdown. Spending $18,000 on hotels and dinners with a mistress qualifies." She flipped the binder open again and pointed to the column highlighted in red. "But this," she said, "the $52,000 in consulting fees to LVE Holdings, this is different. This is not just dissipation. This is a potential criminal liability attached to your joint finances." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Cal had warned me, but hearing it from a lawyer made it real. "Cal thinks it is bribery," I said, "or a kickback scheme." Marianne nodded slowly. "If these funds are indeed proceeds from a bid-rigging scheme or corporate fraud, and they flowed through your joint account, the federal government could theoretically seize the entire account. They do not care that you were the unsuspecting wife. They look at the account number, see the dirty money coming in or going out, and they freeze it." She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "We have to be very careful. Lila, we are walking a razor wire here. If we allege fraud in the divorce filing, we trigger an investigation that could bankrupt the estate you are trying to claim. If we ignore it, you become an accessory after the fact if he gets caught later." "So what is the move?" I asked. "We treat the consulting fees as a diversion of assets," Marianne said, putting her glasses back on. "We do not call it fraud yet. We call it unauthorized transfer of community property. We force him to explain it." She pulled a yellow legal pad toward her and started writing. "Your spreadsheet is excellent," she said. "It is better than what I get from some forensic accountants, but it is not evidence yet. It is just your notes. We need to authenticate this data." "How?" I asked. "We will draft a subpoena for the bank records," she said. "Not just the statements you can download, but the wire transfer confirmations, the IP addresses for the logins, and the signature cards for the recipients. We will also subpoena the employment records of Briar Lane and the vendor contracts from his company." She looked at me sternly. "But we do not file these subpoenas today." "Why not?" I asked. "I want this over." "Because if we file today, he gets notified tomorrow," Marianne said. "And right now, Gavin thinks he has handled the situation. He thinks he bought your brother's silence. He thinks you are at home making pot roast. If we tip our hand before we have the certified bank records, he will shred documents. He will delete emails. He will empty that offshore account or crypto wallet that I guarantee you he has, which we have not found yet." I nodded. It was the same advice Cal had given me. Patience was the weapon. "We need to formalize the evidence," Marianne continued. "I am going to hire a forensic accountant to produce a report based on your data. It will carry more weight in a courtroom than a spreadsheet made by the plaintiff. It will cost $5,000. "Do it," I said without hesitation. Marianne wrote something down. "Now, Regarding the timeline, she said, "You are going to go home. You are going to live your life. You are going to let him think he is safe. In the meantime, I am going to prepare a petition for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and significant financial misconduct. We will ask for a freeze on all assets immediately upon filing to prevent him from moving more cash to this holding company." She paused and looked at the photo of Briar Lane. "This girl," Marianne said, "she is the weak link. If she is accepting these payments, she is liable for tax evasion at the very least. If we depose her, she will crack. She is 24. She is not built for a federal deposition." "I do not want to destroy her life," I said quietly. "She is just a symptom." Marianne looked at me with cold, hard eyes. "She is not a symptom, Lila. She is a co-conspirator. You need to stop thinking like a wife and start thinking like a plaintiff. In a divorce involving high-value asset dissipation and potential criminal conduct, there are no civilians. There are only witnesses and defendants." I took a deep breath. The air in the office was recycled and cool. "I understand," I said. Marianne closed the legal pad. "There is one more thing. When we serve him, we need to do it when he is most vulnerable. We need to catch him when he cannot maneuver. Does he have any major public events coming up? A board meeting? A family gathering?" "He has the quarterly review with the regional directors next month," I said, but I was thinking of something more personal. I told her about the dinner reservation, the one I planned to make, the trap I was setting with the help of Miles and the phone number I had acquired. Marianne listened. For the first time, a faint, razor-thin smile touched her lips. "That is aggressive," she said. "It is necessary," I replied. She leaned back in her chair. "What is your end game here, Lila?" she asked. "Most clients tell me they want the house, or full custody, or the pension. Some tell me they want their husband to suffer. They want him humiliated." She studied my face, looking for the cracks in the armor, the tears that usually came during this part of the meeting. I looked back at her. I thought about the $7,500. I thought about the $52,000. I thought about the lies he told Leo about working late, when he was actually buying silence from a former intern. "I do not need him to hurt," I said, my voice steady and low. "I need him unable to deny." Marianne held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded, a sharp, decisive motion. "Then we will build a wall of paper so high he will not be able to see the sun," she said. She stood up and extended her hand. "I will have the engagement letter sent to you via secure email. Do not access it on a shared device. Do not pay the retainer from the joint account. Use a credit card in your name only, or cash. I have a separate savings account he does not know about," I said, "an inheritance from my grandmother." "Smart woman," Marianne said. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, dry, and strong. I walked out of the office and into the elevator. As the doors closed, sealing me in, I watched the numbers count down. Floor 20, floor 19, floor 18. I had the investigator, I had the lawyer, I had the data. The team was assembled. Now, the waiting game began. I had to go back to the house on Elm Street and sleep next to a man who was stealing our life piece by piece. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. I had 3 hours before I had to pick up Leo. 3 hours to prepare myself to be the loving wife of a liar. I stepped out of the building into the cold Wisconsin wind. It bit at my cheeks, but I welcomed it. It made me feel awake. It made me feel ready. The audit was finished. The legal strategy was set. Now, it was just a matter of execution. And in my line of work, execution was everything. The transformation into the perfect, oblivious wife was not a shift in personality. It was a tactical deployment. For the next 3 days, I treated my marriage like a high-stakes client retention project. I anticipated needs before they were voiced. I smoothed over friction points that usually sparked arguments. I became a mirror, reflecting only what Gavin wanted to see, which was a woman who suspected absolutely nothing. I made his favorite breakfast on Tuesday morning, French toast with challah bread, soaked long enough to be soft but fried hard enough to have edges. The smell of cinnamon and butter filled the kitchen, masking the metallic taste of betrayal that had been sitting at the back of my throat since Sunday. When Gavin came into the kitchen, he looked tired. The dark circles under his eyes were pronounced, and there was a tightness in his jaw that he tried to relax when he saw me. He was wearing his navy suit, the one I had checked for receipts the night before while he was in the shower. "Good morning," he said, kissing me on the cheek. It was a quick, dry peck. He smelled of shaving cream and coffee. "Morning," I said, pouring him a cup from the fresh pot. "You were tossing and turning last night. Everything okay with the quarterly projections?" I watched him over the rim of my own mug. I was testing his reflexes. He stiffened, just for a fraction of a second, before forcing a smile. "Just stress," he said. "The market is volatile. You know how it is." I nodded sympathetically. I knew exactly how it was. The market was not volatile, but his cash flow was about to be. "I was thinking," I said, leaning against the counter and keeping my voice light and breezy. "We have not had a weekend to ourselves in months. Leo is invited to a sleepover at his cousin's house this Saturday. My mom said she would pick him up." Gavin took a bite of the toast. He was eating too fast, a sign of anxiety. "And?" he asked. "And I think we should go to Chicago," I said, "just for the night. Saturday dinner. Maybe a show if we can get tickets, but mostly just dinner, somewhere nice." Normally, Gavin would push back. He would say he had paperwork. He would say he was too tired to drive 2 hours. He would claim that spending money on a luxury hotel was unnecessary when we had a perfectly good house. But this was not a normal week. This was the week he had paid my brother $7,500 to bury a secret. This was the week he needed to believe that his investment had paid off. He looked at me, and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was weighing the risk. If he said no, would I get suspicious? If he said yes, could he play the part of the devoted husband well enough to keep me blind? "That sounds great. Lila," he said. He actually sounded relieved. "A night out. Just the two of us. I think I need that." "Great," I said, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. "I will book the restaurant. I heard about this place in the Loop, the Sterling. It is supposed to be incredible." "Perfect," he said. "Book it." He finished his coffee and left for work. I watched his Audi back out of the driveway. As soon as he turned the corner, my smile vanished. I walked to the sink and dumped the rest of the French toast into the garbage disposal. I could not eat. Every time I looked at food, I saw the spreadsheet. I spent the morning working from home, managing a fleet of trucks moving auto parts from Detroit to Mexico. My professional life was a series of controllable variables. My personal life was a surveillance operation. At 11 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a secure notification. It was Cal Donovan. I opened the app. There was no text, just an image. It was taken with a long-range lens. The timestamp was from 40 minutes ago. The location was the parking lot of a Starbucks on the west side of Madison, nowhere near Gavin's office. Gavin was sitting in his car. The window was down. Standing next to the car, leaning in with a familiarity that made my skin crawl, was Briar Lane. She was wearing a heavy winter coat and looking over her shoulder. Gavin was handing her something. It wasn't an envelope this time. It was a phone, a burner phone in plastic packaging. I zoomed in on the image. Gavin's face was twisted in anger. He was shouting. Briar did not look scared anymore. She looked bored. She looked like someone who knew exactly how much she was worth. I closed the image. He was still meeting her. He was still paying her. And now he was giving her dedicated hardware to communicate. That meant he was scared of digital traces. He knew someone might be watching, but he was arrogant enough to think he could outsmart the radius of the surveillance. I needed to know where Briar stood. Was she a victim of his manipulation, or was she the architect of his ruin? Cal thought she was a co-conspirator. Marianne thought she was a witness. I needed to know if she was breakable. I opened a laptop I kept specifically for this purpose. I had created a social media profile 3 days ago under a generic name. No photos, no friends, just a blank slate with a private setting. I searched for Briar Lane. Her profile was public. It was a curated collection of a 20-something's life. brunch photos, gym selfies, quotes about hustle and success. I clicked on the message icon. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could not reveal who I was. If I spooked her, she might go to Gavin, and then Gavin would know the war had started. I needed to sow discord. I needed to make her doubt him. I typed 8 words. The consulting fees are going to be audited. I stared at the sentence. It was specific enough to terrify her if she was involved in the shell company, but vague enough that it could be coming from anyone. A jealous coworker, a bank error, or a compliance officer at Northbridge. I hit send. I waited. Usually, when you message a stranger on these platforms, it goes into a request folder. Sometimes it gets blocked immediately. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes. The scene indicator appeared. She had read it. I waited for the blocking notification. I waited for her to delete her account. Nothing happened. The message sat there, read and absorbed. She did not block me. She kept the channel open. That was a tell. If she were innocent, she would have blocked a creepy burner account. If she were guilty and panicked, she would have deleted it. But keeping it open meant she was curious. It meant she wanted to know who knew. I logged out and wiped the browser history. The afternoon dragged on. I picked up Leo from school, listened to him talk about his math test, and made him a snack. I was operating on 2 frequencies. On one, I was the mother nodding at a story about fractions. On the other, I was waiting for the inevitable fallout from my text. At 4:30, my real phone buzzed. It was Miles. I picked up immediately. "He just texted me," Miles said. He sounded breathless, like he had walked out of a meeting to call. "What did he say?" I asked. "He wants to meet again," Miles said. "He asked if I was working tonight. He said he has more for me." "More what?" "Money, Lila," he said, and I am quoting him here. "I will double it if we can close the loop on this forever." "Double it," I repeated. $15,000. "Yeah," Miles said. "He is desperate. He said he needs to know that no one else saw him at the hotel. He asked if there were cameras in the hallway." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I would check," Miles said. I stalled him. "But Lila, $15,000? Where is he getting this cash?" "You control the books." "He has a shadow economy." "Miles," I said, "he has a shell company called Elfam E. Holdings. That is where the money is coming from. He is bleeding our future to pay for his past." There was a silence on the line. "Do you want me to meet him?" Miles asked. "Do you want me to take the 15 grand?" "No," I said firmly. "That crosses a line. Taking the first envelope was a reaction. Taking the second one is entrapment or extortion. And I do not want to give his lawyer anything to use against us. We need to be cleaner than him." "So what do I do?" "Text him back." I said, "Tell him you deleted the check-in record. Tell him you handled the cameras. Tell him you do not want his money. You just want him to stay away from the hotel." "But that lets him off the hook," Miles argued. "No," I said, "it makes him feel safe. It lowers his guard. I need him relaxed for Saturday. I need him walking into that dinner thinking he has plugged all the holes. If he thinks you are silenced and Briar is handled, he will get sloppy." "Okay," Miles said. "I will do it. But Lila?" "Yeah?" "Be careful. If he is throwing around $15,000 like it is nothing, he is not just trying to save his marriage. He is trying to stay out of prison." "I know," I said. I hung up. $15,000, plus the $7,500 he already paid, plus the $52,000 in consulting fees, plus the $18,000 in hotels. We were approaching $100,000 in damages. I heard the garage door open. Gavin was home early. I put the phone in my pocket and took a deep breath. I walked to the mirror in the hallway and checked my face. I looked calm. I looked soft. I looked like a wife who was excited about a romantic weekend in Chicago. I heard his key turn in the lock. "Showtime," I whispered to myself. Gavin walked in. He looked better than he had this morning. The text from Miles must have come through. He thought he had secured one flank. He carried a bouquet of flowers, lilies, my favorite. "Hey," he said. a genuine smile on his face for the first time in days. I got off early. I thought maybe we could order in tonight, save our energy for Chicago. I walked over to him and took the flowers. I smelled them. They were fresh, fragrant, and beautiful. They were bought with the same credit card he likely used to buy the burner phone for his mistress. "That sounds wonderful," I said. I kissed him. He relaxed into the embrace, his muscles loosening. He held me tight, the hug of a man who believes he has survived the storm. I rested my chin on his shoulder, staring at the wall behind him. He had no idea. The storm was not over. The storm was just gathering strength, and it was going to make landfall at 7:30 in the evening on Saturday, at a table for two in the center of the Windy City. The Sterling was the kind of restaurant that smelled of truffle oil and old money. It was located on the 42nd floor of a skyscraper in the Loop, with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the Chicago skyline into a glittering, expensive wallpaper. The noise level was a sophisticated hum, the sound of deals being made and affairs being conducted over plates of Wagyu beef. Gavin looked the part of the successful regional manager. He had worn his best suit, the charcoal gray one with the silk tie I had bought him for our anniversary 3 years ago. He moved through the dining room with a confidence that had returned to him only 24 hours ago, after my brother Miles had texted him the lie that the hotel evidence was destroyed. Gavin thought the leak was plugged. He thought the water was no longer rising. We were led to a prime table near the window. I sat down and placed my clutch on the white tablecloth. Inside that small leather bag was not lipstick or a compact mirror, but a folded copy of the spreadsheet I had spent the last week agonizing over. "You look beautiful, Lila," Gavin said. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm and dry. He squeezed my fingers. "I am glad we did this. We needed a reset." I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the faint lines around his eyes, the way his hair was just starting to gray at the temples. He was a man who had built a life on the assumption that he was smarter than everyone else in the room. "I am glad too. Gavin," I said. I smiled. It was the best performance of my life. The waiter arrived, a young man with impeccable posture. We ordered a bottle of Cabernet that cost $200. When it arrived, Gavin swirled the wine in his glass, inhaled the bouquet, and nodded approval. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To the truth," I said, clinking my glass against his. He paused for a microsecond, the stem of the glass hovering near his lips. He thought I meant emotional truth, or perhaps marital honesty. He had no idea I was talking about forensic accounting. We ordered appetizers. We talked about Leo's soccer schedule. We talked about the weather. It was a perfectly choreographed dance of normalcy. But while Gavin was focused on his steak tartare, my eyes were fixed on the heavy oak doors at the front of the restaurant. I had sent the location of our table to the burner account 5 minutes before we walked in. I had added a simple message: "He is spending your audit money on dinner." It was a gamble. Briar Lane could have stayed home. She could have called him instead. But panic is a powerful motivator, and a 24-year-old woman facing a potential federal audit does not sit at home when she thinks her partner is burning through her defense fund. At 7:45, the doors opened. She was wearing a trench coat that was buttoned wrong, as if she had dressed in the dark. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, not the sleek style she had worn in the photos Cal Donovan had shown me. Her eyes were darting around the room, scanning the faces of the diners. I saw her before Gavin did. I watched her gaze sweep across the room, past the business dinners, past the anniversary celebrations, until it landed on us. I saw the recognition. I saw the anger. And beneath the anger, I saw the terror. She started walking toward us. She did not walk like a woman coming to say hello. She walked like a woman coming to collect a debt. Gavin was in the middle of a story about a supply chain issue in Indianapolis. So I told the distributor that if he could not guarantee the timeline, we would have to... He stopped. He stopped because he saw my eyes shift. He turned his head to follow my gaze. The color drained from his face so fast, it looked like a physical injury. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The fork in his hand clattered onto the china plate, the sound sharp and jarring in the ambient quiet of the restaurant. "Briar," he whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. Briar Lane stopped at our table. She did not look at me. She looked only at him. Her hands were shaking. "You are eating steak," she said. Her voice was trembling, loud enough that the couple at the next table stopped eating to look. "You are sitting here eating steak while I'm getting messages about an audit?" Gavin stood up. He was clumsy, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He tried to block her from my view, tried to create a physical barrier between his mistress and his wife. "Briar." "Not here," he hissed. His voice was a desperate rasp. "You need to leave. We will talk about this later. Please, just go." "I am not going anywhere." "Gavin!" she shouted. The veneer of the sophisticated dining room shattered. Heads turned all across the restaurant. "I am not going to jail for you. You said the shell company was safe. You said LVE Holdings was invisible." Gavin reached for her arm, his face a mask of panic. "Lower your voice," he begged. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, trying to silently convey some impossible lie. "Lila, I can explain. This is a disgruntled employee. She is unstable." I looked at him, I looked at her. I did not scream. I did not throw my wine in his face. I did exactly what a logistics manager does when faced with a supply chain crisis. I took control of the chaos. "Sit down, Briar," I said. My voice was calm. It was authoritative. It cut through the tension like a scalpel. Gavin looked at me as if I had started speaking a foreign language. Briar looked at me for the first time. She looked confused. She looked at the empty chair next to Gavin. I beckoned to the waiter, who was hovering nearby, unsure whether to call security. "Bring another glass, please," I said to him, "and a menu." I looked back at Briar. "Sit down," I repeated. "If you are going to talk about LVE Holdings, you should do it sitting down, and you should probably have a drink." Briar sat. She collapsed into the chair more than she sat in it. She looked small suddenly, just a girl in over her head, caught between a man who used her and a woman she thought was a fool. Gavin sank back into his seat. He looked like a man who was watching his own execution and realizing the executioner was his wife. "Lila," he started, his voice shaking, "you do not understand." "I understand perfectly." "Gavin," I said. I picked up my wineglass and took a slow sip. "I understand that you paid my brother $7,500 to keep quiet about a hotel room. I understand that you have transferred $52,000 to a company registered in Delaware over the last 2 years. And I understand that Briar here is terrified because someone told her those funds are being audited." I looked at Briar. "Is that right? Briar?" I asked. "Are you the 10% partner?" Briar stared at me. Her mouth worked silently for a moment. She looked at Gavin, waiting for him to save her, to tell her to shut up, to do something, but Gavin was paralyzed. He was stripped bare in the middle of the Sterling, and he had nowhere to hide. "He promised me it was legal," Briar said. The words tumbled out of her, fast and breathless. "He said it was just a way to bypass the corporate red tape. He said the vendors were going to get the contracts anyway, so we might as well take the commission. He said he needed my signature because he was the regional manager and could not sign off on his own bids." Gavin put his head in his hands. "Shut up, Briar," he groaned. "Just shut up." She did not shut up. She turned to me, her eyes wide and wet. "I did not know about the other stuff," she said. "I swear, I thought it was just the kickbacks. But then he started talking about moving money offshore and paying people to erase servers. I told him I wanted out. That is why he gave me the cash last week. He said it was severance. He said I just had to disappear for a while." She looked at the expensive food on the table, the crystal glasses, the illusion of our happy marriage. "He told me you did not care about him," she said to me, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He said you were cold. He said you were just roommates." I looked at Gavin. He could not meet my eyes. "He says a lot of things," I said. I reached into my clutch, I pulled out the folded paper. I unfolded it slowly, smoothing it out on the white tablecloth next to the candle. It was the spreadsheet. The columns of red and yellow numbers stood out starkly against the crisp paper. I pushed it toward the center of the table. This is a record of every dollar you stole from our family. Gavin, I said, $70,000 that we know of. Gavin stared at the paper. He recognized the dates. He recognized the amounts. Lila, please, he whispered. We can fix this. I can put the money back. I have a deal closing next month. A big one. I can replace it all. No one has to know. I looked at him with a detachment that surprised even me. I did not hate him in that moment. I just felt a profound, icy disappointment. He was offering to fix a federal crime with more crime. It is too late for that, I said. I turned to Briar. You have a choice to make. Briar, I said, you can keep trusting the man who is trying to silence you with cash in hotel rooms and burner phones. The man who is currently trying to figure out how to throw you under the bus to save his own skin. I paused, letting the reality of her situation sink in. Or you can talk to me, because right now, I am the only person at this table who has actually done the math. Briar looked at the spreadsheet. She looked at Gavin, who was sweating through his expensive suit. Then she looked at me. What do you want to know? She asked. Gavin reached out and grabbed her wrist. Don't, he said. Briar, if you talk to her, you burn us both. I looked at his hand on her wrist. Let her go. Gavin, I said. He released her. I want to know about the consulting fees. I said to Briar, I want to know who else is on the payroll, and I want to know exactly what Project 5 is. Briar took a deep breath. She reached for the glass of water on the table and drank it in one long gulp. Project 5 is not a project, she said. It is a person. It stands for Varga, the Vice President of Operations. Gavin is not running this alone. He is just the bagman. The revelation hung in the air. This was bigger than I thought. This was not just a rogue regional manager. This was systemic corruption. Gavin looked defeated. His shoulders slumped. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrified realization that the woman he had underestimated for 9 years had just outmaneuvered him in a single dinner service. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply took a pen from my purse and wrote a name on the napkin. Varga. I looked at Gavin. You are going to pay for this dinner, I said, and then we are going to go home, and you are going to sleep in the guest room, and tomorrow we are going to have a very different conversation. I signaled the waiter for the check. The play was not over, but the curtain had just come down on the first act, and the applause in my head was deafening. I did not remove my hand from the spreadsheet. It sat on the table between the three of us like a signed confession. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away, leaving us in a vacuum where only the numbers mattered. Look at line 14, I said to Briar. My voice was flat. I was not speaking as a scorned wife. I was speaking as an auditor reviewing a non-compliant ledger. Briar looked down. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her mascara slightly smudged, but she focused on the paper. The date is October 15th, I said. A transfer of $2,200 was made to L.E. Holdings. The memo says consulting services. I know, Briar said, her voice small. That was for the St. Mary's Hospital bid. Now look at line 15, I continued. Same date. A withdrawal of $2,000 from LVE Holdings. It went to a darker shade of gray on the spreadsheet because I could not trace the final destination. But I can see the transaction code. It is an international wire transfer fee. I looked up at her. You did not keep the money. Briar, you received it, and 48 hours later, it was moved out. You are not the beneficiary of this account. You are the conduit. Briar frowned. She looked confused. No, she said, shaking her head. Gavin said that was for taxes. He said we had to move the money to a tax-sheltered account so the IRS would not flag it. He said it was accumulating interest for us. I let out a short, dry sound that was not quite a laugh. There is no tax shelter, I said. I pulled another sheet of paper from my clutch. It was the research Cal had done on the banking routing numbers. That money went to an account in the Cayman Islands. An account that does not have your name on it. I slid the paper toward her. I checked the signatory on the Cayman account. I said, "It is not you. It is not even Gavin. It is a shell corporation owned by a trust." Breyer picked up the paper. Her hands were trembling. She read the data points. She saw the routing numbers. She saw the reality of her situation dismantling the fantasy Gavin had sold her. "He told me it was our nest egg," she whispered. She looked at Gavin. "You said that money was for when we left. You said it was 50-50. Gavin made a noise in his throat, a desperate, strangled sound. "Breyer, listen to me," he pleaded, leaning forward. "Lila is twisting it. She does not understand how these structures work. It is complex. It is for your protection." "Protection?" I interrupted. I did not raise my voice. I simply sharpened it. Protection is when you put money in a Roth IRA. Protection is not routing illicit funds through a 24-year-old former intern's Social Security number and then moving it offshore where she cannot touch it. I looked at Gavin directly. "You set her up. Gavin, you made her the registered agent of LI Holdings. That means when the subpoena comes, and it will come, her name is on the door, not yours. You are just the regional manager who signed a contract. She is the one who accepted the kickback." Gavin opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off with a look that was pure steel. "Do not lie to me right now. Gavin," I said, "I have the bank records. I have the dates. If you lie one more time, I will hand this entire file to the waiter and tell him to fax it to the FBI field office in Milwaukee." Gavin shut his mouth. He sank back into his chair, his face gray and slick with sweat. He looked at the tablecloth, unable to face either of us. I turned my attention back to Breyer. "You are not a partner. Breyer," I said, "you are a liability shield. He built a structure where you take the fall and he takes the money." Breyer was staring at Gavin now with a look of pure loathing. The romantic illusion was gone. She was looking at a man who had not only cheated on his wife, but had systematically planned to ruin his mistress to save himself. "He told me," she started, then stopped. She took a ragged breath. "He told me that if I did not do it, Varga would fire him. He said we needed the money to start over." And then she said the thing that changed the calculation entirely. "He made me delete the emails," she said. I froze. This was the procedural error I had been waiting for. This was the obstruction of justice. "Which emails?" I asked. Gavin lunged forward. "Breyer, stop," he shouted. "Do not say another word." "Sit down," I commanded. My voice cracked like a whip across the table. People turned to stare again. I did not care. I held Gavin's gaze until he retreated. He was terrified. He was a man watching his life disintegrate, and he had no power to stop it because I held the only thing that mattered, the narrative. "Tell me about the emails." "Breyer," I said softly. "It was last week," she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger. "The day before he went to Milwaukee. He called me in a panic. He said the internal audit team was flagging some of the vendor communications. He gave me a list of dates." She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Not the burner phone Gavin had given her, but her personal one. I took a picture of the list before I shredded it. She said. She tapped the screen and turned the phone toward me. It was a photo of a handwritten note on a napkin. Gavin's handwriting. A list of 6 dates and specific subject lines. Saint Mary's implementation. Supply chain variance. Varga approval. He told me to log into the archive server. Breyer said, he gave me his admin password. He said I had to purge these specific threads from the backup. He said if I did not, we would both go to prison. "Did you do it?" I asked. "I tried," she said. "I deleted them from the active Outlook folders, but I could not get into the deep archive. I told him I did it, though I was scared. I looked at the phone. I looked at the spreadsheet. So the emails still exist," I said. "Yes," she said. I sat back. This was the leverage. This was the nuclear option. Gavin was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He knew what this meant. Attempting to delete evidence was a felony. Instructing a subordinate to do it was worse. I looked at Briar Lane. She was young, foolish, and greedy, but she was also a victim of a predator who had used her ambition against her. I am going to give you a choice. Briar, I said, and you have exactly 30 seconds to make it. She looked at me, her eyes wide. Option A. I said, you walk out of here. You keep trusting Gavin. You keep the burner phone. And when the Department of Justice uncovers this audit, which they will, because I am going to mail this spreadsheet to them, you will be the primary defendant. You will be charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. You will go to federal prison for 10 to 15 years. I let the silence hang there. Option B, I continued. You give me that phone. You give me the burner phone. You sign a sworn affidavit stating exactly what Gavin asked you to do. You become a cooperating witness. You hand over the evidence of the coercion. If you do that, my lawyer can help you negotiate immunity. You walk away with a ruined reputation, but you walk away free. I checked my watch. Time starts now. Briar did not need 30 seconds. She did not even need 3. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the burner phone still in its plastic packaging. She placed it on the table next to her personal phone. She slid both of them toward me. I will testify, she said. I am not going to jail for him. Gavin made a sound like a wounded animal. He covered his face with his hands. I picked up the phones. I put them in my purse. I put the spreadsheet back in my clutch. I signaled the waiter again. He came over, looking nervous. Check, please, I said. When he placed the black leather folder on the table, Gavin did not move. Pay the bill, Gavin, I said. He reached for his wallet with trembling hands. He pulled out his credit card, the platinum one that was linked to the rewards points we used for family vacations. He handed it to the waiter. We sat in silence while the transaction was processed. Briar stared out the window at the dark city. Gavin stared at his empty plate. I stared at Gavin. The waiter returned. Gavin signed the receipt. He did not check the total. I stood up. Briar stood up too. Go home. Briar, I said, do not call him. Do not text him. If he tries to contact you, record it. My lawyer will call you on Monday morning. She nodded. She looked at Gavin one last time, a look of disgust and pity, and then she turned and walked away. I watched her weave through the tables and disappear out the front door. I was alone with my husband. We walked to the elevator in silence. We rode down 42 floors in silence. We got into the car. He drove. The drive back to Madison took 2 hours. Neither of us turned on the radio. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the highway and the rhythmic thumping of the windshield wipers. Gavin drove with both hands gripping the wheel, his knuckles white. He looked like a man who had been driving for days. When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked the same as we had left it. The porch light was on. It looked like a home, but it was not a home anymore. It was a crime scene. We walked into the kitchen. I put my purse on the counter. I took off my coat. Gavin leaned against the refrigerator. He looked exhausted. He looked broken. Lila, he said, his voice a husk. I am sorry. I never meant for it to get this far. I got in over my head. Varga pushed me. He said everyone was doing it. I did not want to hear his justifications. I did not want to hear about peer pressure in the corporate suite. I walked over to the island and poured myself a glass of water. I took a sip. Then I turned to him. I have one question. Gavin, I said, and this time, I want the absolute truth, not the version you told Briar, not the version you told yourself. He looked at me. His eyes were red. What? He asked. I thought about the $7,500. I thought about the $52,000. I thought about the emails, but mostly, I thought about the fear, the sheer, unadulterated panic I had seen in his eyes when Briar walked into the restaurant. You are not scared because of the money. I said, you can pay back the money. You are not scared because of the affair. Men like you survive affairs all the time. I took a step closer to him. You are scared because of what happens if you stop paying. I leaned in. You asked Breyer to delete emails about St. Mary's. You asked her to delete emails about supply chains. But you also asked her to delete emails about Varga. Gavin flinched. I looked him dead in the eye. You are not buying silence to save your job. Gavin, you are buying silence to save your life. I paused, letting the weight of the words settle in the kitchen. What did Varga do? I asked. What is in those emails that is worth $7,500 in cash and a felony charge? Because it is not just bid rigging. You are protecting something else. Gavin looked at me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I used to love. But then the fear took over again. He looked at the back door, then at the window, as if checking for shadows. He swallowed hard. It is not what he did. Lila, he whispered. It is who he is working for. My blood ran cold. Who? I asked. Gavin shook his head. Tears leaked out of his eyes. If I tell you, he said, his voice barely audible, the money won't matter. The prison time won't matter. If I tell you, we are not just divorced. We are dead. I stared at him. The kitchen suddenly felt very big and very cold. What are you buying silence for? I repeated, my voice hard as stone. He looked at me, and the answer he gave me was not a name. It was a sentence that turned the audit into a nightmare. I am not buying silence. Lila, he said, I am paying ransom. I stood there, the glass of water in my hand. The spreadsheet in my purse was no longer just a list of financial crimes. It was a list of payments to keep a monster at bay. And I had just cut off the funding. I looked at Gavin standing in our kitchen, his chest heaving, the word ransom hanging in the air like a noxious gas. He wanted me to be afraid. He wanted me to join him in the bunker of his own making, to become a co-conspirator in his misery so that we could be miserable together. That is what he thought marriage was at this point, a suicide pact. I did not ask him who Varga worked for. I did not ask him how deep the water was. I simply picked up my purse from the counter. I am not having this conversation, I said. My voice was devoid of tremor. Gavin stepped toward me, his hands reaching out. Lila, you have to listen, he begged. If you file for divorce, if you freeze the assets, the payments stop. If the payments stop, they come for us. They come for Leo. I stepped back. I raised a hand, palm out, a clear signal to stop. You do not get to use our son as a human shield for your felonies. Gavin, I said, you crossed that line when you opened a shell company with your mistress. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I went upstairs to the guest room. I locked the door. I pushed the heavy oak dresser in front of it. I sat on the edge of the bed and took out my phone. It was 11:14 at night. I called Marianne Klein. She picked up on the second ring. She did not sound sleepy. Lawyers like her did not sleep when there was blood in the water. File it, I said. Are you sure? She asked. Once we file, the clock starts. The asset freeze goes into effect immediately. File it, I repeated, and I want a restraining order attached to the petition. Not for physical violence, but for financial coercion. I want him barred from accessing any account with my name on it, and I want him removed from the house pending the hearing. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. I will have the courier at the courthouse when they open at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Marianne said, by 9 o'clock, he will be served. You need to be out of the house. Lila. I am leaving now, I said. I hung up. I did not pack a bag. I did not want him to hear zippers or drawers opening. I took my purse. I took the folder with the spreadsheet. I climbed out the window onto the porch roof and dropped down into the rhododendron bushes in the front yard. It was a maneuver I had not done since I was 16, but muscle memory is a powerful thing. I got into my car and drove to a hotel downtown. I did not go to Miles. I did not want to drag him further into the blast zone. The next morning, I met Cal Donovan in his office. It was a small room above a bail bondsman, smelling of stale paper and coffee. Briar Lane was there too. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She was huddled in a chair, clutching a styrofoam cup of tea. Cal looked at me as I walked in. He placed a thick stack of documents on his desk. "Your husband was telling the truth about one thing," Cal said. "He is not the top of the food chain." "Tell me," I said, sitting down. "I ran Varga," Cal said. "Emil Varga, Vice President of Operations. On paper, he is a corporate suit. In reality, he is the brother-in-law of a man named Silas Kovic." I stared at him. The name Kovic meant nothing to me. "Kovic runs a transport syndicate out of Chicago," Cal explained. "They move things: drugs, guns, cash. They use legitimate logistics networks to hide their shipments. Northbridge Medical ships MRI machines. Those machines are big, heavy, and shielded with lead, perfect for hiding contraband that you do not want X-rays to see." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "So Gavin is not just rigging bids," I said. "He is shipping for the cartel." "He is the facilitator," Cal corrected. "He signs the manifests. He reroutes the trucks. And the consulting fees? That is his cut. But recently, it seems he tried to get out. Or maybe he skimmed a little off the top. That is when the extortion started. They demanded he pay back what he stole, plus interest. Hence the panic. Hence the cash to your brother." I looked at Briar. She was shaking. "Did you know?" I asked her. "No," she whispered. "I swear. I thought it was just regular corporate greed. I did not know it was this." "But you have the emails," Cal said gently. "Show her." Briar. Briar pulled out her phone. She opened an app I did not recognize. "I did not just try to delete them," she said. "I made a local copy first. I was scared Gavin would try to blame me later. So I wanted insurance." She handed me the phone. I scrolled through the thread. It was dated 3 months ago. From Gavin Charles to Briar Lane. Subject: Varga requirements. The manifest for shipment 402 needs to be altered. Change the weight class. Varga says if this doesn't clear customs by Friday, the penalty clause activates. You know what the penalty is. Just do it. There were dozens of them. Instructions to bypass way stations. Instructions to falsify contents. And threats. Explicit threats from Varga that Gavin had forwarded to Briar to scare her into compliance. "This connects him directly to the trafficking," Cal said. "This is not a divorce case anymore. Lila, this is a RICO predicate." I handed the phone back to Cal. "Package it," I said. "Every email, every bank transfer, every text message." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the street. People were walking to work, buying coffee, living their normal lives. They had no idea that monsters were operating in the office buildings above their heads. "Gavin is going to be served in an hour," I said. Cal nodded. "He will panic. He might try to run." "He won't run," I said. "He thinks he can talk his way out of it. He thinks I am just an angry wife. He thinks he can explain the ransom, and I will feel sorry for him. He thinks I will protect the father of my child." I turned back to them. "He does not realize that I am not protecting him. I am amputating him." I went to my lawyer's office to wait. At 9:15 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Gavin. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, and again. I sat in the conference room, drinking sparkling water. Marianne came in at 9:30. "It is done," she said. "He was served at his desk. Security escorted him out of the building because of the restraining order. His company accounts are frozen. Your joint accounts are frozen. He has no access to cash." I nodded. "Did he say anything?" I asked. The process server said he looked stunned. Marianne said, "He kept saying, 'She cannot do this. She does not understand.'" I smiled a thin, cold smile. "I understand perfectly." My phone beeped with a voicemail notification. I put it on speaker so Marianne could hear. "Lila, pick up the phone. You have no idea what you have done. You froze the accounts? Are you insane? Varga is going to see the freeze. He is going to think I am turning on him. You have put a target on all our backs. You need to lift the order now. Right now. Call me." Marianne looked at me. "He is admitting to the conspiracy on a recorded line," she noted. That was smart of him. "I want to send a reply," I said. Through me, Marianne cautioned. No, I said, not a text. I want to send him a document. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive containing the full forensic package. The spreadsheet, the emails Breyer had provided, the photos of the burner phone. Send him the index. I said, just the table of contents. Let him see that we have Breyer. Let him see that we have the emails he thought were deleted. Marianne took the drive. If we send this, she said, he will know there is no coming back. He will know you are not just divorcing him, you are dismantling him. That is the point, I said. Marianne sent the file. 10 minutes later, my phone stopped ringing. The frantic text stopped. The barrage of noise ceased completely. Silence. It was the silence of a man who had looked into the barrel of a gun and realized it was loaded. He knows, I said. Now what? Marianne asked. Now we wait for him to make the mistake. I said, he is cut off from his money. He is cut off from his job. He has a cartel boss breathing down his neck and a federal indictment forming over his head. He is desperate, and desperate men do not make rational decisions. Cal called me 10 minutes later. He is on the move, Cal said. He left his office building. He is in his car. He is driving fast. Where is he going? I asked. He is heading south, Cal said, toward the interstate. But Lila? He is not going to the airport. Where is he going? He is going to the warehouse, Cal said, the Northbridge Distribution Center. My heart skipped a beat. Why? I asked. Because that is where the evidence is, Cal said, the physical manifests, the hard copies. He is going to try to burn it down, or he is going to try to meet Varga. I looked at Marianne. Call the police, I said. Tell them there is a trespasser at the Northbridge warehouse. Tell them he is violating a restraining order. Marianne picked up her phone. I sat back in the leather chair. I closed my eyes. I could see it playing out in my mind. Gavin, speeding down the highway, sweating, terrified, thinking he could destroy the paper trail before the world caught up to him. He did not know that the paper trail was already digitized, duplicated, and sitting on a server in my lawyer's office. He did not know that his mistress was sitting in a safe house giving a sworn statement to a retired cop. He thought he was fighting a fire. He did not realize he was already standing in the ashes. The real witness was not the paper, it was Breyer, and she was ready to talk. I opened my eyes. He thinks it is over, I said softly. He thinks the worst thing that happened today was a divorce paper. I looked at the clock. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. He has no idea that by noon, he won't be worrying about Varga anymore. He will be worrying about the United States Attorney. The silence that followed the initial shock of the service of process did not last long. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the silence had been replaced by a digital barrage that felt less like communication and more like a siege. I sat in the conference room of Marianne Klein's office, my phone lying face up on the mahogany table. It vibrated every 30 seconds. Gavin was no longer leaving voicemails about saving our marriage. The tone had shifted violently. He was now cycling through the stages of grief, but he was doing it at 100 miles an hour. First came the bargaining. He sent texts promising to sign over the house, the cars, and his entire 401k if I would just lift the asset freeze for 24 hours. He claimed he needed to pay a vendor. He claimed it was a misunderstanding. Then came the anger. You are a vindictive bitch. One text read, you are going to ruin Leo's life just to prove a point. When Varga finds out you lock the accounts, he is going to come for you, not me. I looked at the screen, my pulse steady. He was trying to weaponize my fear, but he forgot that I had already done the risk assessment. The danger from Varga was real, but the danger of staying married to Gavin was immediate. Marianne reached over and tapped the phone. Do not reply, she said. Every threat he types is another nail in the coffin of his custody case. We are logging all of this. I am not going to reply. I said, I am going to pick up my son. I left the office and drove to Leo's school. I was 20 minutes early. I sat in the car, watching the parents gather by the gate. They looked normal. They were worrying about dinner plans and homework. I was worrying about whether my husband's cartel associates were watching the playground. When Leo came out, he looked small in his puffer jacket. He saw me and ran over, his backpack bouncing against his spine. "Mom," he shouted, "you are early." I knelt down and hugged him. I held him tighter than usual, smelling the scent of crayons and playground mulch in his hair. I was the firewall. As long as I stood between him and Gavin, the corruption could not touch him. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of glass. "We are going to have an adventure tonight. We are staying at a hotel, the one with the indoor pool." Leo's eyes widened. "The one with the slide?" "That is the one," I said. I put him in the car. As I buckled his seatbelt, I saw his iPad light up in the back seat pocket. It was a notification from iMessage. "Dad. Leo, tell Mom to answer the phone. It is an emergency." My blood ran cold. Gavin was bypassing me. He was reaching out to a 7-year-old to do his bidding. I took the iPad. "Hey," I said, "no screens today. We are doing a technology detox. Just pool time." Leo complained, but I tossed the device into the front seat. My hands were shaking. That was the line. He had targeted the one asset I had sworn to protect. I drove us to the hotel. I checked us in under my maiden name. I ordered pizza for Leo and let him watch cartoons, while he laughed at a sponge living in a pineapple. I went into the bathroom and called Miles. "He called me," Miles said immediately. He did not even say hello. "What did he want?" I asked, watching my reflection in the hotel mirror. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who had aged 10 years in 10 days. "He offered me $50,000, Miles said. He sounded incredulous. "He said he has a stash that is not in the banks. He said he would bring it to me in a duffel bag tonight if I would just sign a paper saying I never saw him at the hotel. He wants me to recant." $50,000, I repeated. "He does not have $50,000. Miles, his accounts are frozen." He sounded manic. "Lila," Miles said. He was talking fast. He said he could get the money from a loan shark in Chicago. He said, "Tell her to stop. Miles, tell her she is killing me." "Did you record it?" I asked. "I did," Miles said. "I told him to go to hell, but I kept the line open long enough to get the offer on tape. I sent the file to your lawyer 5 minutes ago." "Good," I said. "Stay at the hotel. Miles, put security on alert. If he shows up, call the police immediately. Do not engage him." I hung up. Gavin was flailing. He was running out of runway. At 4:30 in the afternoon, Cal Donovan called me. "I have eyes on him," Cal said. "He is at the main branch of First Wisconsin Bank downtown. He is trying to make a withdrawal." "Is he causing a scene?" I asked. "He is screaming at the teller," Cal said. "He is telling them there is a mistake. He is trying to use his platinum card, but the system is rejecting it." The branch manager just walked over. "Security is moving in." I closed my eyes. I could see it. The suit, the desperation, the humiliation of a man who defined himself by his purchasing power suddenly realizing he was bankrupt. "He just left," Cal reported. "He kicked the glass door on his way out. He is getting back in his car. He looks like he is about to snap." "Lila." "Where is he going?" "He is sitting in the parking lot," Cal said. "He is on the phone." I checked my own phone. It was not ringing. "He is not calling me," I said. "No," Cal said. "He is making a call he does not want recorded." I knew who he was calling. He was calling Varga. He was trying to explain why the consulting fees had stopped. He was trying to beg for more time. But Varga was a businessman, and in his line of business, frozen assets were a liability he cut loose immediately. I went back into the lawyer's portal on my laptop. Marianne had uploaded a new document. It was the data preservation order signed by a judge only an hour ago. This was the death blow. The order mandated that Northbridge Medical preserve all electronic records associated with Gavin Charles. It explicitly forbade the deletion, alteration, or encryption of any emails, server logs, or financial data. It was sent directly to the legal department of Northbridge. Gavin did not know it yet, but his access to the company's servers had just been revoked. If he tried to log in to delete the evidence Breyer had told us about, he would be locked out. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Breyer Lane arrived at Marianne's office to formally surrender her evidence. I was not there, but Marianne conferenced me in. "I have the hard drive," Breyer said. Her voice was steady now. The fear had been replaced by a grim resolve. She knew she was burning her own life down to save herself from prison, but she was doing it. "What is on the drive?" "Breyer?" Marianne asked. "Everything," Breyer said. "The original unedited emails, the Excel sheets where he calculated the markup for the smuggling runs, and a recording." "A recording?" I asked. "He made me wear a wire once," Breyer said. "When he met with Varga, he was paranoid that Varga was going to stiff him on a payment, so he wanted proof of the agreement. He made me put my phone in my purse and record the meeting." "Does it identify Varga?" Marianne asked sharply. "Yes," Breyer said. "Varga calls him by name. He discusses the route. He discusses the payoff. And he says, 'If this goes south, Gavin, your wife and kid are the collateral.'" I felt the blood drain from my face. "He knew," I whispered. "Gavin knew our lives were the collateral, and he did it anyway. He thought he could control it." Breyer said, "He was arrogant." Marianne spoke up, her voice crisp and professional. "This is sufficient. With this recording, we do not just have a divorce case, we have a federal indictment. I am turning this over to the United States Attorney's Office immediately. They will issue a warrant." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. Leo was asleep now, exhausted from the pool. He looked peaceful. He had no idea that his father had gambled his safety for a consulting fee. "It is over," I said. "Not yet," Marianne warned. "The warrant takes time to process. Maybe a few hours. Maybe until morning. Tonight is the most dangerous window. Gavin knows he is cornered. He has no money. He has no allies. He has Varga coming for him. He will come here," I said. "He will come to the house." "You are not at the house," Marianne reminded me. "He does not know that," I said. I hung up. I opened the app connected to our home security system. I had changed the master code 2 days ago, but I still had access to the cameras. The house was dark. The driveway was empty. I watched the feed on my phone. The minutes ticked by. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. At 8:45, headlights swept across the driveway. Gavin's Audi pulled in. He did not park neatly. He abandoned the car at an angle, half on the grass. I watched him walk to the front door. He looked disheveled. His tie was gone. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top. He tried the code. It beeped red. Access denied. He tried it again. Access denied. He pounded on the door. I could not hear the sound, but I could see the vibration in the camera frame. He was screaming. He kicked the door. Then he did something that made me sick. He walked to the flower pot where we used to keep a spare key, a key I had removed yesterday. He overturned the pot, empty. He picked up the pot and threw it through the front window. Glass shattered. The security alarm triggered, a silent alert to the police, as I had requested. Gavin climbed through the broken window. I switched the camera view to the living room. He was inside. He was not looking for me. He was not looking for Leo. He was looking for the safe. He ran to the study. I switched cameras. He tore the painting off the wall. He punched in the code for the wall safe. It opened. I had not changed that code because I wanted him to open it. I wanted him to see what was inside. The safe was empty. I had removed the passports, the emergency cash, and the birth certificates 3 days ago. In their place, I had left a single piece of paper. Gavin reached in. He grabbed the paper. He pulled it out and read it under the light of the hallway lamp. It was a copy of the divorce petition. He stared at it. He crumpled it in his hand. He fell to his knees. For the first time, I saw him not as a villain, but as a ruin. He was a man who had sold his soul for a lifestyle he could not afford, and now the bill had come due. My phone rang. It was Cal. "Police are 2 minutes out," Cal said. "I am watching from the street. Do you want me to intervene?" "No," I said. Let them take him. I watched on the screen. Blue and red lights flashed against the living room walls. Gavin looked up. He did not run. He did not fight. He just sat there on the floor of his study, surrounded by the wreckage of his life, holding the paper that declared his marriage was dead. Officers entered the room with guns drawn. They shouted commands. Gavin raised his hands. I watched them handcuff him. I watched them walk him out the front door, past the broken glass, past the ruined flower pot. I turned off the phone. I looked at Leo sleeping in the hotel bed. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not for Gavin. It was for the 7 years I had spent trusting a stranger. But as I wiped the tear away, I felt something else. I felt the weight lifting. The logistics were handled. The asset was secure. The threat was neutralized. I lay down next to my son. The war was over. Now, I just had to survive the peace. The courtroom in the Dane County Courthouse was a study in beige and brown, a sterile box designed to contain the messy explosions of human lives. I sat on the left side of the aisle, next to Marianne Klein. My hands were folded on the table, resting on top of a thick file labeled Petitioners Exhibit A through Z. Gavin sat on the other side. He was out on bail for the break-in charge, but he looked like a man currently serving a life sentence in his own mind. He wore a suit that was slightly too big for him now, as if the stress of the last 2 weeks had physically eroded him. He did not look at me. He stared at the water pitcher on his table with a terrifying intensity. The hearing was for the final divorce decree and the permanent custody order. Because of the restraining order and the pending criminal charges involving the break-in, the process had been expedited. Judge Harrison, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and zero tolerance for nonsense, presided over the bench. Marianne stood up. She did not raise her voice. She did not need theatrics. She simply laid out the architecture of Gavin's destruction, brick by brick. Your Honor, she began, we are presenting evidence of significant dissipation of marital assets, amounting to over $70,000 diverted to a shell entity known as VIE Holdings. Furthermore, we are presenting evidence that the respondent engaged in a systematic campaign of bribery and coercion to conceal this dissipation, which directly endangers the financial security of the minor child. She called Miles to the stand. My brother walked up the aisle. He looked calm. He looked like the protective older brother he had always been. He took the oath. Mr. Charles came to my place of work, Miles stated clearly. He offered me $7,500 in cash. He explicitly stated that the money was for my silence regarding his presence at the hotel with a woman who was not his wife. When I refused to take the bribe, he later increased the offer to $50,000. The courtroom was silent. $50,000. The number hung in the air, heavy and damning. It was not just a number. It was proof of desperation. It was proof of guilt. Judge Harrison looked at Gavin. Gavin shrank into his collar. Then came the deposition of Briar Lane. We did not need her in the room. Her sworn video testimony was enough. On the screen, Briar looked young and scared, but her voice was steady. She detailed the structure of the shell company. She detailed the instructions to delete the emails. She detailed the threats. He told me we had to hide the money, Briar said on the screen. He said if Lila found out, she would take everything. But then he told me the money was coming from the shipping markups. He made me an accomplice without my consent. Gavin's lawyer, a court-appointed attorney because Gavin's assets were frozen and he could no longer afford his high-priced firm, tried to object. He argued that Briar was a hostile witness. He argued that the financial records were circumstantial. Marianne simply handed the judge the spreadsheet, the forensic audit, the document that matched the bank transfers to the dates of the text messages. The numbers do not lie, Your Honor, Marianne said. Gavin was asked if he wanted to speak. He stood up. He looked at the judge. Then he looked at me. For a fleeting second, I saw a flash of the man who used to charm clients and close deals. He opened his mouth, perhaps to spin one last story, perhaps to claim he did it all for us. But then he saw the look on my face. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was indifferent. I was looking at him the way I looked at a spreadsheet that did not balance. "I have nothing to say," Gavin whispered. He sat down. The ruling was swift. It was brutal in its efficiency. Judge Harrison granted the divorce on the grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment and financial misconduct. She awarded me sole legal and physical custody of Leo, with supervised visitation only to be revisited after the conclusion of Gavin's criminal proceedings. She awarded me the house, the car, and the entirety of our legitimate retirement accounts as compensation for the marital funds he had stolen. Gavin got his clothes, he got his personal items, and he got the debt associated with LVE Holdings. But the courtroom victory was only the first half of the finale. As we were packing up our briefcases, Marianne handed me a sealed envelope. "This is the confirmation from Northbridge," she said quietly. I opened it. It was a copy of the termination letter sent to Gavin that morning. The internal investigation, triggered by the data preservation order and the evidence Breyer had provided, was complete. Northbridge Medical had fired Gavin for cause. They were also filing a civil suit against him for corporate espionage and fraud. He had lost his family, he had lost his fortune, and now he had lost his career. We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was flooded with natural light, a sharp contrast to the fluorescent gloom inside. Gavin was walking ahead of us, flanked by his lawyer. He stopped near the elevators. He turned around. He looked at me. It was a long, searching look. He was trying to find the wife who used to make him coffee, the woman who used to believe his lies about late meetings. He was looking for Lila Charles, the supporting character in his life. She was not there. I looked back at him. I saw a stranger. I saw a defendant. I saw a liability that had been successfully removed from my ledger. "Goodbye, Gavin," I said. The elevator doors opened. He stepped in. The doors closed, severing him from my life with a final metallic thud. I walked out of the courthouse. The air outside was crisp and cold, the kind of Wisconsin winter air that wakes you up. I walked down the stone steps. At the bottom of the steps, my mother was waiting with Leo. She had brought him to meet me so we could go celebrate with ice cream, regardless of the temperature. Leo saw me and ran forward. "Mom," he yelled. I caught him in my arms. I lifted him up, spinning him around. He felt solid. He felt safe. He was the only asset that mattered, and I had secured him. I put him down and took his hand. We started walking toward the parking lot, my mother chatting happily about how well he had behaved. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Miles. He was not at the courthouse. He had been at the hotel, handling one last piece of business for me. I had asked him to ensure that the police had the final piece of the puzzle regarding Varga. I looked at the screen. "It is done." The text read, "Varga was picked up in Chicago 20 minutes ago. The wiretap Breyer provided gave them everything. They are charging him and Gavin under the RICO Act. It is over. Lila. For real this time." I stopped walking. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold, clean air. The $7,500, the $52,000, the lies, the fear, it was all gone. It had been dismantled by logic, by patience, and by the absolute refusal to be a victim. I looked down at Leo. He was looking up at me, smiling. "Where are we going, Mom?" he asked. "We are going forward." "Leo," I said. I put the phone away. I squeezed his hand, and we walked away from the courthouse into a future that finally belonged to us. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Gavin's downfall. If you enjoyed this journey of justice, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit the like button and press the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to know that the truth is always worth fighting for.